Hello there everybody and welcome back to another Blender tutorial where today we are making flag simulations, except it's not a simulation, it's completely driven by geometry nodes. And you might be thinking, what is the point of making a flag simulation when you can actually do a cloth simulation? Well, this has the advantage of being completely procedural, so at any point I can say make it choppier, or also make the flag droop more, or any of these things. We have control over the entire flag simulation, the amount of distortion that happens in the flag, and the thing is, we never have to simulate a thing, and we don't have to have the first couple frames be it like picking up wind and stuff like that. So that's what this tutorial is about, and as always, if you don't know what's going on in geometry nodes and you want a crash course, I wrote a book, Introduction to Geometry Nodes. Good selling, Tom. Let's get into it. So check out that book if you want to know what's going on. I highly recommend it. So, how do we make a flag? Here's what we're going to do. So go into geometry nodes, take the cube, make it a geonodes group, and delete it. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a grid, in other words, a plane, and we're going to distort it as we go along the x-axis following a certain set of rules, is basically the idea. So, I just swallowed some apple. Help me. Okay, so we start off with a grid. It looks like this. I'm going to make it 2 by 1, so it's more flag-shaped, but you can do this at any aspect ratio. I'm going to also rotate this by 90 degrees, so it's actually facing this way, and like I said, we want to distort this along the x-axis. To do this, I want to extract the x-axis, so I'm going to take the position, and I'm going to separate the xyz component, and we're interested in this x component. One thing, though, is the x component, since this is size 2 or 3 or whatever, goes from -1 to 1. Or if I make it bigger, it goes from -1.5 to 1.5, etc. In other words, I want a 0 to 1 gradient, but we don't have that to begin with. So, what I can do is I can say map range -1 to 1 to 0 to 1. What this effectively looks like is now it's a gradient going from left to right. If we didn't do this, it'd be kind of centered, which we don't want. So this is going to be the strength of our effect. Speaking of the effect, it's actually very simple to make. All you need to do is use a set position, and for the offset, use a noise texture. And there's a argument for Musgrave if you want to. I don't even know if that's an option in geometry nodes. Is it an option? Yes, it is. I'm just going to use a noise texture. Tried and true. Increase the resolution of the grid. Clearly, it needs some, and this looks horrible. So, here's what we need to do. First of all, take your noise, and we need to center it by subtracting by 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 on the x, y, and z axis. This centers it on average, because noise goes from 0 to 1, so by subtracting 0.5, it centers it. And we are also going to scale this effect by some small number, and that controls this effect. By the way, we can always add more resolution to this to make it crispier. I'm thinking this kind of looks horrible, so let's take the scale, bring it down, and now it looks nice and smooth, although we can always increase the detail or something like this. And let's also control the coordinate system that the noise texture is using. Why are we doing this? Because if we add to this coordinate system, on the x-axis, for example, you can see we're actually animating the flag, or you can also do it on the y-axis, whatever. So, that apple's really in my throat. We're going to combine x, y, z, and we're going to have the x-axis change over time, although it needs to go to the other direction. So I'm going to multiply by -1. And you can see we have some animation. To make this thing stronger, we bring up the scale, and remember, it's kind of like moving on this side, which is supposed to be attached to the pole. We want to scale this by our x-axis, our map ranged one. So I'm going to connect this right here. God. And you can see now our flag is doing the thing it's supposed to do. To control the strength, we can now change this max value, and that can be the strength of our flag. Now, if you make this too high, it kind of looks dumb, because you can actually see the x-axis move through it. So I would recommend not making it too big. Or, if you want to get fancy, I didn't actually do this on mine, you can change the W over time. That's changing the seed of the noise texture. I didn't even think to do that. Let's do that. So I'm going to take this. The seed's probably going too fast, so I'm going to multiply this by 0.2. And now, if we increase this, it shouldn't look as stupid. That's great. Okay. So we have our flag doing the thing. The way you want to think about this is roughness is going to be the choppiness of it. So you can have it smooth or super choppy. Distortion is going to add some like distortion or some bending to it. And scale is kind of the scale of this. Okay? And it's completely procedural, good for us. One thing though is it's not affected by gravity. It should be drooping as we move along the x-axis because gravity is affecting it. And this side is held up by a pole. But we already have our x-axis extracted. So all we need to do is we need to take this, we need to subtract by a custom vector where we are dipping. In this case, it's the y-axis. You might think it's the z-axis, but it's because we rotated our object before. So you have to think about it as if it's on the xy plane. Connect this to the y-axis, and now you can see it's drooping, but it looks horrible. I would recommend connecting an RGB curves to this so we can kind of control the kind of curvature of this effect. And then also we can multiply this by a small number to control the size of this. So this is without and with, just so it has a bit of drooping. And that's basically it for the simulation. We can kind of control anything about it. Again, you can make this flag bigger. By the way, if you make it bigger, like let's say it's 4, you need to set this to -2 by 2. Of course, we could have proceduralized this very easily, right? So if we set this value to be 2 explicitly, and then we take this and divide by 0.5 and divide by -0.5, we just connect that to the map range, and now it should work for any size, as you can see. So that's another reason. You don't have to do a cloth simulation for every time you change the fucking flag. Okay, so what do I want to do here? Oh, by the way, is it respecting this x-axis rule? We might have messed this up. Divide, no, multiply. Multiply. You guys should have warned me. Okay, so you should have reached out through the screen and said, it's multiply, not divide. Okay, so last thing we need to do is we need to apply a texture to this. I actually have a texture somewhere on the desktop, and you can just like load this in via Google Images or something. Just get a flag texture, and what we want to do is we want to bring over the thing. How do we do that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to store named attribute. So this is to bring over our coordinate system. What do I mean by this? I mean we can look at the position of this, and now you can see we have a coordinate system. I want to store named attribute. I'm going to call this chords. It's going to be a vector, and we want to bring over the position. Although really that's not what we want because it's going to be centered right here. It'd be nice if we could center it at the bottom left corner. To do that, we need to subtract by 0.5, 0.5, and we also need to multiply by, I believe, 2 on the x-axis. This is because it's a 2x1 flag. Let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to take this right here, connect the grid, and that doesn't look promising, does it? Let's see what's going on here. So we took our position. Oh, I see. We want to subtract by -0.5 and bring the x-axis, in other words, add 0.5. And we want to bring the x-axis over here. Since it's a 2x1, we bring it back -1. And I believe that's what we want now. That's our grid. And if we view it from the waving flag, just a bit of technical stuff here, you can see it's actually following the thing. Okay, long story short, we have a coordinate system. We want to bring this over, so let's apply a material so that we can actually see this. So if we go to the shading workspace now, you can see anything we do to the material affects the flag. And last thing we want to do is bring in this coordinate system via an attribute, if I can spell that word, and we called it chords. So here you can see is our coordinate system that moves with the flag. And finally, we should just be able to load in an image texture here, no sweat. So from the desktop, I'm going to load my flag. Well, it almost worked. Let's see what the issue here is. So in geometry nodes, let's view this. I think it's just a matter of how we scaled this. So let's see. Yep, so it's not scaled by 2, it's scaled by 0.5. It's the opposite of what you would think. Common mistake, common mistake. Okay, so here we have our flag to get this thing with actual shadows connected to the BSDF, and now this thing has actual shadows. And again, you want to do better lighting. In fact, let me do that lighting for us so we can actually see what's going on. Again, the appeal of this is at any point we could have changed anything about this flag. The choppiness of it, so now it's like a very windy day. The droop of it, so if it's like, you know, not very windy, the gravity would seem to have more of an effect because the wind isn't doing any lifting. And also you can do the curvature of the lift and stuff like this. And you can add distortion and make your flag do whatever. And it's actually computationally cheap. So there you go. That is how you make a flag simulation in Blender. And now, the sponsor of the video. Okay, thank you for watching my tutorial about making flag simulate. Well, not a simulation. We use geometry now. Either way, this video is sponsored by a chair. It doesn't seem related at all, and that's because it's not. This is an eWin gaming chair, or a luxury chair. You can call it whatever you want. I got shipped this thing in exchange for a review, so here's a quick review. It's a chair. You can sit in it. Has a bit of suspension, so it's actually very comfortable. It's got a pillow right here, so for your gaming neck needs. Things to know about this, the wheels are smooth, so, I mean, if that's what you want, that exists. Also, the armrests do this, which I've never seen before, the tilting and stuff like that. Of course, like any chair, or like most office, actually some office chairs don't do this. You can tilt it backwards, easier if you're sitting in it. You just pull the lever. Look at that. Now we're gaming horizontally. Okay, 90 seconds of elapsed. No, they have not. We continue. This gaming chair is the best chair. It is the only chair. There's a link in the description if you want to get the chair. I don't know what else to say about the chair. Full disclosure, usually in these sponsored segments, you kind of have to do a certain time limit. In my head, this is a 30-second review, but it's got to be a 90-second review. This chair cures cancer. This chair does everything you want it to do. But it is a comfortable chair. Link in the description if you want to get the chair. It's a good chair. Nothing. Okay. Thank you. Bye.